Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So, the end of Tesla's Dojo. Or is it? Two things I want to make very clear before I get into this. Remember, we only have roughly, we'll call it 2% of the data and the conversations that take place behind closed doors at Tesla. So it may feel like we all know exactly what Tesla should do. Just please remember, we have very, very limited data. So to think that you or I know better than Tesla and XAI engineers really should be laughable. And the second point, things are moving so fast in the semiconductor space that most of us don't have a firm grasp on. Unless you work at one of these semiconductor companies or you're all the way into the weeds with all of the public information when it comes to the specifics and the packaging and the interconnects, you're just likely going to have too limited a view of how fast things are changing. For example, just the other day, this report came out saying that Tesla was going to change its supplier when it comes to the packaging for Dojo. One reason Tesla could not opt for TSMC, who is the leader right now in 2 nanometer technology, is that the custom D1 chips used in Dojo are big with multiple chips on one wafer. And given the fact that relative to other customers, TSMC just could not satisfy limited orders from Tesla. So the word was Tesla was going to shift to Intel, who might be able to connect multiple dies using these tiny bridges, and doing it that way would offer more modularity, which means Tesla could integrate additional functionalities or fine-tune existing ones as well, which hints at the very pivot we're going to be talking about through this episode. So James Dalmo is talking about a sublime FSD experience, to which Elon first said the FSD software update next month will be a major step change improvement for rare conditions. But I think most of us would still have the question, what about regular conditions? Things like speed changes, lane selection, potholes, and the like. For now, we'll just have to wait and see. And then Amit shared the news from Bloomberg that Tesla is winding down its efforts with Dojo, focusing their compute needs on Nvidia, AMD, and Samsung. And Pete Bannon, along with a lot of other Dojo talent, is also leaving Tesla. To which Elon said it does not make sense for Tesla to divide its resources and scale 2 quite different AI chip designs. The Tesla AI5, AI6, and subsequent chips will be excellent for inference and at least pretty good for training. All effort is focused on that. Now, I have to say the first line is somewhat of a cop-out without more of an explanation, because clearly Elon and Tesla thought for the better part of the past 5 years that it was the right decision to scale 2 different chips. And remember, Dojo was on the compute or neural net training side, and then the AI line or the hardware lines were in the vehicle like Hardware 3, AI4 for inference. And to date, those two have been very different designs because they had very different use cases. But as I said at the outset, things in this world are changing very rapidly. Now, was it a realization that Tesla can't catch up to Nvidia on the training side? Was it a realization that Tesla would be better served doubling down on AI5 and AI6, which is what Tesla does better than anyone else? Was it a Dojo talent exodus that forced Tesla's hand this direction? Those questions we don't have official answers for, so they'll remain up for debate, but clearly something did change. But in fairness, Elon did kind of lay it out on the Q2 call. We have this convergence happening between the training and the inference. In short, Tesla's AI5 and AI6 are effectively going to be replacing Tesla's own internal efforts that was Dojo. But the big question here is, how good can AI5 and AI6 actually be when it comes to training, not just inference? And if Elon is saying publicly only pretty good, then how good is that really? And this is what Elon said on the Q2 call, thinking about Dojo 3 and the AI6 inference chip. It seems like intuitively we want to try to find convergence there, where it's basically the same chip. Phil Beisel said AI6 is now Dojo, and that there is some crossover between Dojo and AI5 and 6. They share many core design elements, particularly the math operations used in neural networks, matrix multiplication, and highly parallel processing. In a sense, Dojo will live on as the generalized AI6. And Elon replied to that with a bullseye emoji. Then Elon said in a supercomputer cluster, it would make sense to put many AI5, AI6 chips on a board, whether for inference or training, simply to reduce network cabling complexity and cost by a few orders of magnitude. One could call that Dojo 3, I suppose. So yes, not even Elon is fully sold on AI5 and AI6 being called Dojo 3. So despite the shakeup, it sounds like there will be some positive outcomes here too. Tesla will be doubling down on what it does best and really specializing in inference. And this pivot will mean reduced networking complexity and also significant cost savings, which might also reduce Tesla's R&D spend in future quarters as well. Elon said the difference in real-world performance between AI4 and AI5 is far more than any chip version I've ever heard of by a lot. It's real good. So remember, AI5 is not expected in the Tesla fleet until toward the end of 2026. But one of the main themes here, both AI5 and AI6 are each going to play a more significant role on the training side, which should help to validate Tesla's FSD models faster. You may remember how Elon said it's getting pretty hard to tell which FSD version or model is better as the overall interventions decrease. The hope here is that AI5 and AI6 will be so much more capable, they'll be able to shorten these validation timelines because they're going to be a bit more involved on the training side with this synthetic data. So I do think AI4 will end up being more than capable of running unsupervised FSD when Tesla figures that out from an inference perspective, meaning it's what you would need in your car, whereas AI5 and 6 and their improvements will be required more on the training side, and they'll help Tesla create more synthetic data to validate these FSD models faster. This was kind of funny. Yashu said you have to be high if you really think Elon and Tesla just gave up on Dojo. And then we got confirmation of the news from Elon, but he did later reply to this saying to Yashu, "You're not high," sharing his post that was implying AI5 and AI6 are the new Dojo 3. Here's what I'll say. The fact of the matter is the Dojo project as it was started is done. Initially, it was a purpose-built project that will no longer be developed, and replacing it with a chip that has been custom-built for inference is really not a continuation of the original Dojo program. So from that perspective, I really don't care what anybody says about it or how they try to frame all of this. Now, can you also do training with a chip that is built for inference compute? Yes, of course you can. But as Elon said, it would only be pretty good, which in Elon terms, I would take to mean it's not great, especially when you consider the fact that Dojo was supposed to be custom built for training massive amounts of video data, which is exactly what Tesla was doing. So in an ideal world, yes, Tesla would have cracked the code for Dojo 2 and 3 and continued on and gotten to the point where they don't have to pay all of these 70% plus margins to Nvidia. But having said that, then we got this from Elon. He said most training in the future will actually be inference for the sole purpose of training, aka synthetic data generation. Now, this brings questions like, at what point in the future could this inference heavy training scenario be realized? For now, we don't know. But if this turns out to be true, this pivot from Tesla would make a lot more sense. Generating synthetic data requires much less compute power than training full models on real-world data. And guess what? It's because of all of the real world data that Tesla already has that allows Tesla to generate high quality synthetic data. That's because it can be rooted in ground truth from the real world data. In the past, we've talked about relying too much on synthetic data alone and how that can lead to model collapse because ultimately they're too reliant on synthetic data alone. So Elon is suggesting that eventually most compute resources in the training pipeline will be dedicated to running inference on existing models, creating that synthetic data that's then fed back into the training loop to improve the model. And if Tesla can pull this off, that means the hardware is cheaper, it's more scalable, and more power efficient than traditional training hardware. But again, what actually changed for Tesla to realize this? And is this really what's going to happen in the next few years, or is this just narrative spinning to blunt the impact of this news? I think a canary in the coal mine to watch will be XAI and its compute purchases over the next few years. And bear in mind, Dojo was using very complex packaging and interconnects and was really a next-gen type of thing, but that brought immense challenges too. So given Tesla's pivot to more inference, that's a much less complex version of Dojo 3. But the good news, it's going to rely on Tesla's inference compute, which it already does better than anyone else, and that means the Dojo team and its expertise with the complex packaging really wouldn't be needed anymore if Tesla can pull this pivot off. Now, I know some are going to call the Dojo project a flop and a waste, and sure, you can argue ultimately it was not successful. But I do think more context is needed. Dojo is doing real training at some level of useful work, and that will likely continue. But don't forget why Dojo started. Just last year, Elon acknowledged he was quite concerned about Tesla's inability to access top-tier NVIDIA GPUs. This because of skyrocketing demand for microprocessors. Elon said, "I'm incredibly impressed by NVIDIA's execution and the capability of their hardware. What we are seeing is that the demand for NVIDIA hardware is so high it's often difficult to get the GPUs." Elon said Tesla would have to put a lot more effort into Dojo to ensure the company has the training capability it needs without having to rely exclusively on NVIDIA. "We do see a path to being competitive with NVIDIA with Dojo. We kind of have no choice." And a year before that, in 2023, Elon said, "Frankly, if they, NVIDIA, could deliver us enough GPUs, we might not need Dojo. But they can't because they have so many customers." Elon also said at the time he wasn't even sure if Dojo would prove superior to buying NVIDIA chips off the shelf. In 2024, Elon described Dojo as a long shot worth taking because the payoff is potentially very high, but it's not something that's a high probability. I just think it's easy to expect Tesla to continually pull these rabbits out of hats because they've done it so many times in the past. But I think it's important to remember how wild it really is for Tesla to try to take on NVIDIA head to head. Because the way I see it, NVIDIA really is the Tesla of the semiconductor world. They're an ever-moving target, just like Tesla. In total, Tesla probably ended up spending between $1 and $2 billion on Dojo. And perhaps most importantly, all of these companies are learning on the fly. These data centers and end-to-end neural nets are still very new. And with how fast semiconductors improve, I still think it is a superpower for Elon and Tesla to be able to pivot quickly, to cut ties, and to not continue pursuing a project just because they have costs sunk into it. Now, I will say, we're never going to know for sure if Tesla was forced into this path because they just could not advance Dojo quickly enough and they ran into too many challenges, or was it that Tesla really did find a superior way to approach all of this training, validation, and inference? And I will say, I completely understand why people are so frustrated with Elon and his public commentary and certain things not coming to fruition. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, he said that we were expecting to have Dojo 2 operating at scale sometime next year, with scale being somewhere around 100,000 H100 equivalents. So was that statement nonsense, or in the past 2 weeks, did all of these revelations or all of this breakdown actually happen? Again, I don't think we're ever going to know for sure, and how you view this situation will likely come down to how you view Elon and if you're more cynical or optimistic. I do find it hard to believe Elon could go from thinking Dojo 2 was going to be at this type of scale next year to the Dojo program ending in just 2 weeks. But hey, sometimes it only takes one catalyst or realization or aha moment to shift what Elon views as the best path to take, and he wastes no time in doing that once he sees the new vision. Just like he decided to turn Tesla into a real-world AI company with FSD and Optimus when the technology stars aligned, point, and the data warranted that shift. For me, because of Elon's track record of success, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I do wish he had more restraint with his public promises. I'd rather see underpromising and overperforming, save all of that moonshot talk for your engineering teams. And I'm really glad I just saw this reply from Elon, another bullseye emoji, because he's replying to a comment that confirms what I was just talking about earlier. The highlights, Ashwin is saying there's been a major paradigm shift in chip design and packaging driven by use of chiplets. Just think smaller chips integrated inside a package like Legos. All you need to know, thanks to this, a single chiplet could be used for inference with smaller memory, capable of running in a car, and then multiple copies of the same chiplet slapped with high bandwidth memory and networking interfaces could be used for training, saving cost and complexity. Ultimately, it's the performance per dollar that needs to be maximized. And the cost of the inference chiplet is now amortized across the millions of cars running inference plus the hundreds of thousands of training nodes. And remember what Elon said about AI5, how it was truly a spectacular chip. If you take nothing else away from this video, let it be that the differences or the gap between that training and inference are being blurred at Tesla. It's that convergence that Elon was talking about on the Q2 call. So my point, technically speaking, there are certain things that are possible now that just were not possible even a year or a few years ago. So Tesla's pivot is moving away from a specialized Dojo hardware that only does training toward a more versatile setup with AI5 and AI6 that support not only excellent inference but also some level of training in the traditional sense that really should help Tesla validate these FSD models faster by using that synthetic data, which is very closely linked to inference compute, and using more synthetic data that's rooted in all of the real-world data that Tesla has should help to shorten the feedback loop to validate these models. And I would just say there are certain learnings and knowledge that Tesla would never have or know had they not taken on the Dojo project. It didn't pan out as we had expected or hoped, but sometimes it's only through the process of failing that you can actually learn what the best path really is. And again, Tesla has to remain flexible in an environment that is changing as fast as this one is with AI and semiconductors. For me, the biggest negative here will be Tesla being forced to rely on NVIDIA. Tesla will be paying high margins, and there are still some chip constraints for H100s and H200s, and it's even worse for NVIDIA's new Blackwell line. And second would be Tesla losing some top talent, losing Pete Bannon, who's a legend, and another 20 or so engineers from the Dojo team isn't ideal. But again, like I said, their specialties might not be required at Tesla with this pivot to inference compute away from the super next-gen packaging and interconnect that was the Dojo project. So Tesla may have some minor constraints getting more compute over the next 18 months, but I really don't see that changing any timelines for customers or the robotaxi and ride-hail operations. Speaking of that, CERN asked, could this be the version that allows the safety monitors to come out? Talking about the 10x parameter model that Tesla is set to release sometime in September. Responding, Elon said this will substantially reduce the need for driver attention, but some complex intersections, heavy weather, or unusual events will still require attention. Note, the Austin Robotaxi FSD build is around 6 months more advanced than what's available in cars in America, and there are some additional breakthroughs in Tesla AI that will make the car feel eerily human. Now, we know that to date, Tesla has been using a separate model for the robotaxi and ride-hail service compared to what the customer fleet has. But my understanding was that this new model with 10 times the number of parameters would unify those software stacks once again, meaning this new 10x parameter model will become the updated software branch for both robotaxi ride-hail and for the broader customer fleet. And that's how Tesla was going to incorporate some of these more advanced features from the robotaxi service into the broader fleet. And the way Elon replied to CERN here would confirm that thesis for me. That's because the safety monitor situation is what we have for robotaxis in Austin, which you could take to mean the robotaxi fleet is going to get this same model sometime next month. But on the other hand, it gets confusing because Elon said this will substantially reduce the need for driver attention, which is a different thing altogether than the safety monitors. All this to say, right now, I'm not positive what this new 10x parameter model will mean for robotaxis and ride-hail. But it does sound like for the broader customer fleet that's definitely going to get this model, it may not yet be the version that's going to unlock unsupervised FSD, as Elon's expectation is there will still be certain edge cases that still require attention. So I won't lie, I was disappointed to read that because I really did think this new model was going to be the one that would eventually enable unsupervised FSD. So for whatever it's worth to you, I'm not personally expecting unsupervised in any regions on customer cars at any point this year. Because of this comment, I have pushed back my expectations for that until sometime in 2026. And until we get more clarity on if the 10x parameter model will also be used for the robotaxi fleet, I don't have a dogmatic stance about removing safety monitors. Having said all of that, I do still think there's a world where Tesla does remove the safety monitors in Austin sometime later this year. And replying to somebody explaining some of the differences between training compute and inference compute, Elon said block quantization can be used to achieve high precision for back propagation. So back propagation is really just how the neural networks learn. They calculate their errors from previous predictions and then adjust the internal weights backward through each layer of the neural net to become more accurate over time. And remember, this quantization is just the technique used to make these models smaller. So these AI models use numbers, and let's say with a higher precision version, they use 32 bits, which gives you more accuracy. Then it's the quantization that would shrink that down to maybe 8 bits to save memory and speed up the compute. And further, with this block quantization, rather than treating each number as its own entity, you guessed it, this method groups them into blocks. And these numbers in a block would share things in common, and this helps the model to use fewer bits overall. In short, Elon's comment means that Tesla's AI5 and AI6 chips will maintain high precision required for effective back propagation, or these neural nets actually learning and being more accurate during training without requiring excessive resource demands, which of course would actually enable Tesla to converge their hardware efforts into one versatile chip line, which would be used in the vehicles, on Optimus, and at Tesla's data centers, effectively rendering any need for a separate Dojo program as obsolete. So hopefully you can see how on the surface and at first glance this shakeup felt like a failure, a loss, a setback, etc. But I will say, the more I've researched it and thought about it, the more I can see how this does bring some real positive outcomes with it. There is of course plenty of execution risk that Tesla still has to carry out for AI5 and 6, and there are zero guarantees those new chips will be good enough to fully bridge the gap between inference and training. So yeah, there is some very real risk there. But frankly, the entire Dojo project was one major risk, as we highlighted earlier. And it's also true that now Tesla will be more reliant on NVIDIA and others. But this is going to make Tesla leaner. It'll force them to be more efficient. It'll save them significant money. It'll unlock better economies of scale for the AI chip line, and it will likely save Tesla a lot of complexity on the networking side. And lastly, I did want to say this. No, I do not think Elon is a liar, despite all of the past commentary. I just think with his timeframes and expectations, they're ultimately just guesses. It's what Elon thinks is possible in the moment. I really don't think he's doing it with nefarious intentions or bad motives, and I really don't think he cares at all about pumping the stock. I just think he's passionate and excited about what he's building, and he does like to get Tesla fans excited too. But yes, he's notoriously optimistic and does not get his timelines right all the time, and as I've said, things are changing very quickly right now, and personally I'd prefer a leader for Tesla who can pivot when the data warrants it, rather than a leader who lets pride get in the way of taking the best path as things change. I have my own version of breaking news today for everyone, and to share it, I want to share this little experiment I did with Ashley.
Berries. Like orangey, pineapple, or like a fruit punch.
The first one was berry, second one citrus, and the third one tropical.
If I had to pick one, I'd probably go with this one, the tropical one. So
yes, AG1 now has 3 new flavors, citrus, tropical, and berry, that are in addition to the original, which I always thought had a pineapple and vanilla taste. If I could only pick one, my favorite right now is the citrus, which is like a blend of lemon and orange. The best part about this, these new flavors are derived from plant-based sources with no added sugar or artificial sweeteners. And no matter which one you go with, one scoop still has your multivitamin, pre and probiotics, superfoods, and antioxidants in every serving. If I had to pick one of the most noticeable differences for me, it would be steadier energy and focus throughout the day. I really am much less reliant on coffee, and if you want the clinical backing, AG1 did 4 gold standard clinical trials showing its efficacy in closing nutrient gaps and supporting gut health. And yes, this was shown even in healthy eaters. So for me, it's like my nutritional insurance, setting my days up for success even when things get off track. So if you want to give these new AG1 Next Gen flavors a try, you can use my link or scan the QR code, and you'll also get a free welcome kit worth $76 when you subscribe, which includes 5 travel packs, a shaker, a canister, and a scoop. Enjoy. Tesla has officially been granted a rideshare license in Texas. Tesla's Robotaxi LLC is now listed as a transportation network company licensee with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. And yes, this is that license that recently became necessary under that new state law that takes effect September 1st. That's the one that regulates rideshare operations using autonomous vehicles the same way as those services using human drivers. Now, this is not going to change anything for Tesla's Robotaxi operations in Austin. It has nothing to do with Tesla removing the safety monitors. It's really just saying that officially Tesla will be able to continue its operations as is as of September 1st when those new laws go into place. And as we said earlier this week, if Tesla wanted to remove the safety monitors now, they absolutely can. But I already covered that situation in depth earlier this week, so go back and catch that one if you missed it. Nick Patane shared this chart of a few different locations where Tesla's validation vehicles have been spotted in and around the Austin area in Texas. And I know it's exciting to see these updates, but really we should all understand that wherever Tesla has a geofence at that time, they're always going to be working on expanding outward from that location, whether it's being reported and these validation vehicles are spotted or not. We got a bit more information about the new Model Y L in China. It'll have an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack that will give it 751 kilometers of range. If you go to the Tesla China configurator right now, you will see that the current long-range all-wheel drive Model Y gets 750 kilometers of CLTC range. So yes, the Model Y L will be the longest range variant in China, but only by 1 kilometer. Dennis was able to test out Tesla's new rock sliders and body armor for the Cybertruck. So I'll have a link to his video below if you're interested. But Tesla has now officially launched this Cybertruck terrestrial armor package for $3,500. It does say Foundation Series only. The non-Foundation Series will be available September of this year. Tesla shared another supervised FSD video testing in Auckland, New Zealand. They said judder bars and all. And judder bars are just a New Zealand specific term for speed bumps. Hopefully you noticed how in the post they said nothing about pending regulatory approval. That's because Tesla has confirmed there are no regulatory barriers to its deployment in New Zealand. This following collaborations with local authorities. So this is just a matter of Tesla starting with internal and employee testing before rolling out to wider customer access. Meaning, if this testing goes well, maybe customers in New Zealand will end up with supervised FSD later this year. And for those keeping track, this is now country number 13 where we have video videos of Tesla either operating or testing its FSD. Raj from Tesla Service said in a few service locations, Tesla started to share local and regional leader contact information via the service intake in the mobile app. This so customers can reach out via phone when they disagree with the initial diagnostic, warranty, or changes in estimates. Once we build guardrails from abuse, we will expand to all service locations. While the US is taking away EV incentives, Italy is introducing them. Starting in September, this new program aims to encourage the purchase of at least 39,000 ZEVs by June 30th next year. They'll do this by making 600 million euros available in resources. NHTSA is apparently looking to test Tesla's robotaxi service in Austin, which was kind of funny. They were begging for an invite, trying to coordinate so they could get a ride. NHTSA did not say, though, whether their staff was able to take a ride or not. This is NHTSA just looking to keep tabs on Tesla's operation, and they were looking for information on the size of Tesla's robotaxi fleet and its plans for a public launch and the use of remote operators. It's always fun when people take these posts from Tesla way too far. This one was for India and specifically Delhi, but remember, this is August 11th, not November 8th. Which means this is likely just signaling the opening of Tesla's showroom in Delhi. According to the Chinese MIIT, Tesla is now making Model 3 vehicles with a front bumper camera. Not only that, but the chrome badging has been switched to black. At this point, I've heard nothing official about retrofits, but it's an encouraging step in the right direction, and I would expect this to come to the United States eventually. Elon is back in customer service mode, replying to Meet Kevin. Meet Kevin had some battery drain problems while on vacation, and Elon said, "This is strange. Tesla service will take care of your car, and we will find out why this happened and fix it." He said Sentry mode and cabin overheat protection were off, but don't forget about that new feature that can also leave your accessory power on if you don't turn it off. Ford is yet again delaying 2 of its next-gen electric vehicles as it switches its focus to smaller, more affordable options. Ford is delaying their full-size electric pickup to 2028 from 2027. Additionally, its next-gen e-Transit van, which was set for 2026, has been delayed to 2028. Farley said the pure EV market in the US seems to us very clear. Small vehicles used for commuting and around town. Speaking of pickup trucks, the Air Force plans to buy 2 Cybertrucks to use as targets for precision munitions during testing and training. The service says the vehicles are needed to prepare for adversaries who may use them in the future. They said the truck doesn't sustain the amount of damage expected from a major impact, and tests need to reflect real-world situations. The Air Force also said its 48-volt electrical architecture provides superior power and efficiency, a feature that rivals are only beginning to develop. According to Wood Mackenzie, Tesla has retained its top spot for the second consecutive year as the leading global producer in the battery storage integrator market with a 15% market share in 2024. Chinese company SunGrow is in second with a 14% market share. But listen to this, for the North American market, Tesla held the top spot with 39% market share. But a fun fact, 7 of the global top 10 battery storage integrators are now headquartered in China. So around the world for battery storage market share, Tesla is still number 1. And in North America, their market share lead is even more significant. Charlie Bolello shared a pretty interesting data point. We now have the average price of a used Tesla falling below the average price of all used cars. The latter is just over $28,000 and the former just under. And we've been over this a handful of times. There are many factors that drove these much higher used prices for Tesla over the past few years. But overall, the prices are still coming down, so that narrative that Teslas would be an appreciating asset has certainly not taken root yet. Tesla stock closed the day at $329.65, up 2.29%, while the NDX was up 0.95%. The volume was 1% below the average. Don't forget, check out those new flavors of AG1 for those of you interested, and as always, thank you for supporting the channel in that way. Hope you guys have a safe and wonderful weekend. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.